I think it's always very important for people to take responsibility for their problems. Um, Things happen around you all the time, um, and they're not a problem for everybody. Anything that is a problem for you, you'll find somebody who doesn't have an issue with it. The point being that um, there's a factor there that you always have to consider. When you look at all of your problems, every single one of them, and I do mean every single one in life, they all have one common denominator, right? Or is it common factor? What does it matter, right? Um, I think you get my point. They've all got one common element involved, and I think you know what that is. And I could spell it out for you, but I don't think it would be as fun, we used to play those, I don't know why I want to call them games. They weren't games, but when I was in grade school, they used to teach you by letting you fill in the blank. I don't exactly know why my mind just jumps to calling it a game. I mean, those things were fun. They were great educational tools. And I know I'm going off topic here, but I tend to do that, and I guess I like to do that. So I've got my own tendencies as far as behaving unprofessionally is concerned. I've got plenty of those. I guess you got to have fun in life sometimes. I thought those things were fun, fill in the blanks, and it's a great tool to teach people things. Sometimes you gotta not give people all the answers. First of all, that's presumptuous. That's supposing in the first place that you have all the answers, or that you even have a lot of them, which is probably bullshit. There's that saying about leading a horse to water. I think sometimes even leading the horse to water is a bit presumptuous. You're assuming that you know the way to the water, and maybe you do, but you're assuming that it's your responsibility to take that horse there, and maybe it's not. Maybe that's not your fight. Maybe that journey, whether it's a 5-minute trip to the lake or to the water, whatever, to the watering hole, or it's a 5-day journey. Those 5 days, even those 5 minutes, maybe you could have used them for something else, something, how to say this? I don't want to say of more importance, something maybe that you should have put more of a priority into. How often do we fight these fights in life? How often do we fight these fights in life that we, in the moment they seem very noble, and we think we should be engaged in them, but later on we realize, and it's not good to go back and in retrospect and think of the could have beens, but sometimes we realize later on that we could have done something a little more worthy with that time. Whether or not we succeeded, whether or not we succeeded in whatever we spent our time on, even if we did succeed, right? We go back sometimes and we'd think, well, I could have spent my time on something else, something maybe that required more of my attention. That's what I mean when I say it's not always your fight. If you've got the time to spare, I guess that's great. But you certainly shouldn't make time for that kind of stuff when you don't have it, or when it isn't there.